back to the markets. We have, as promised, Abhiram Eleswarapu, head of India Equity at BNP Paribas, joining in. Abhiram, good to have you in. And it's been a very eventful year that's finally winding down. But as we get into the final phase of the year, growth concerns, that's the big debate here in India. Not just the FMCG space, but overall growth. What have you made of the chatter around this? And as of now, what is portfolio positioning, specifically with respect to some of these areas where the concerns are consumer stocks, staples, etc.?
Sure. Thank you, Surabhi, for having me here. If I take the overall picture in terms of growth, we started off the year talking about relatively weak rural consumption, and we're ending the year talking about urban consumption also being relatively slow now. Now, if you see, one of the ways to kind of gauge this is looking at GDP growth. And we see the first quarter wasn't very good. Second quarter improved slightly. And yet we're probably averaging something like 6% growth for the first half. But looking at the projections for the rest of the year, and that we will end somewhere in the mid-sixes, naturally calls for an improvement from here on. So overall, urban consumption is a concern. I expect some of it to ease off towards the second half of the year. Now, in terms of portfolio positioning, and I think I have mentioned this to you in the past as well, we are underweight consumer staples. We think those concerns will remain. Now, some raw material pressures also building. Growth has generally been weak. Some aspects of consumption, however, are not that bad. For example, if you see some parts of durables, for example, which are related to construction, let's say, cables and wires, those kind of segments are still okay. But if you have to take a broad view on consumer, it's not exactly the greatest space at the moment.
Abhiram, hi, afternoon. I know you've been bullish on IT, and every time you come, we talk about it. Now, the question is, at what point does IT become fairly valued because of the kind of run-up that we've seen in IT stocks?
Yeah. If you look at IT stocks, I think they've kind of marginally outperformed the index, maybe about 7-8% over the index year to date. I'm not particularly surprised, but here's the picture. We've got to think of what may happen in the next 3 to 6 months. In the US, and which is the biggest segment for all of them, geographically speaking, you will probably have a rate cut before the end of the year. Usually, rate cuts are followed by improving PMIs in the US, and improving PMIs tend to reflect in better revenue growth. So I would think that the catalysts for growth still continue. Some of the more high-frequency data, if you see, I think financial services has been doing rather well. And some of the deal trackers that we do suggest that retail and CPG may also pick up. So I would think overall that it still pays to remain positive on IT services. In terms of valuation, look, at the end of the day, we're also taking a relative call on the market. The market as a whole is expensive compared to its history at 20.5 times maybe forward earnings. And in that context, valuation is less of the concern and more about where is the next positive trigger from. And I would think in IT, you still have some positive left.
I'm just coming to you. Let's pull up Gokuldas exports. And if you can pull up a 1-year chart, maybe 1 or 2 year chart, it's finally starting to see a bit of a breakout. So 2023 was a very good year for Gokuldas exports. Stock went from about 400 levels to $1,000 in December of 2023. And then 2024 has been absolutely flat. Before, the move started 3 days back. And it's now, about 100 rupees up for the year. So we'll see. Actually, it's not just Gokuldas exports. Look at something like Indo Count, KPR Mills. I'm not sure there is any specific news flow, but across the board, there are, at least on charts, some breakouts, etc., visible. Feedback from apparel makers has been good, especially those who supply to large sort of chains in the US that, demand has been booked out for the next couple of months. So that perhaps is one reason, especially for the apparel guys. Abhiram, do you have coverage on any of these names or allied names here?
Unfortunately not on textile manufacturers, but I would say one thing on exports as a whole. Take a look at the outperformers of the year actually include both IT services and pharmaceuticals. So export stories overall have done well. And in situations where you can talk about multi-year demand shortages, or like you mentioned, demand has been booked out for a long time. Take a look at, for example, transformers and some power equipment areas. So where there's a strong multi-year demand tailwind, stocks have started to do quite well. Overall, I think export-oriented companies have done well this year.
Do you have coverage? Which ones do you have coverage on? Power and transformers?
We do look at the space in general, yes.
Abhiram, any of the new IPOs which are open now? You had Suraksha recently. Vishal Megamart is a big one. MobiKwik has been fully subscribed, I think, already. I mean, very strong subscription already on day 2. Today there's IKS Health. Any of these IPOs catch your attention?
I mean, obviously, I won't comment on a specific single IPO, but what I would say is that in general, IPOs have made a pretty strong comeback over the past month or so. If you see for the initial part of the year, it was much more around block trades and so on and so forth. And off late, IPOs have come back. And to be fair, in general, the subscription levels have been surprisingly good, and a lot of it being driven by domestic money. Take a look at overall domestic flows this year, crossing 60 billion maybe. It's kind of totally unexpected, well beyond any number that we've seen through history. And there's no reason to expect that they won't remain strong next year as well. 16 billion, even if it goes down somewhat, will still be healthy enough to support IPOs. So I think that in general, new exciting companies are coming to the market, and I would expect this trend to continue to the first half of next year.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it there, Abhiram. Thank you very much for your time. Good speaking with you. Appreciate it as always here on CNBC-TV18. So that's Abhiram from BNP with Perspective. We'll take a break. We'll come back. What's happening in dealing rooms? Nimesh joins in for D Street Chatter. We'll tell you what's the buzz and what are the stocks which are on Nimesh's radar. Our technical calls, near-term technical calls also coming up after that.